The night was quiet, but not silent. The faint hum of streetlights buzzed in the distance, and a cold wind moved between the rows of parked cars. A black woman walked slowly toward her vehicle, her heels clicking softly against the concrete. She had finished a long day of work, and the only thing on her mind was getting home. The parking lot was nearly empty. A few cars sat under flickering lamps, casting long shadows across the ground. The woman moved with calmness, carrying her purse close to her side. But in her chest, there was a small, unshakable feeling something wasn't right. As she reached for her car keys, a voice cut through the silence. "Hey, you there?" The sharp tone echoed across the lot. She turned her head, startled, and saw a man walking toward her. His uniform was clear. A police officer, his flashlight beam pointed directly into her face, forcing her to squint. The woman stayed still, her expression calm but cautious. The officer's footsteps grew louder as he approached, his hand resting firmly on his belt. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice firm, almost hostile. The question felt unnecessary. She was standing right next to her car, her keys in her hand, her purse over her shoulder. It was obvious what she was doing, but the officer's eyes carried suspicion, as if he had already judged her before hearing a single word. "I'm heading home," she replied softly. Her tone was polite, controlled, but inside she felt a wave of unease. The officer took another step closer, narrowing his eyes. "This isn't your car. I've never seen you around here. Are you trying to break in?" The woman blinked in disbelief. "This is my car. I just finished work. I'm going home." But her explanation didn't seem to calm him. Instead, his posture grew even sharper. He tilted his head, studying her like a threat. "Show me some ID," he ordered. His hand moved closer to his holster, not pulling his weapon, but letting her know it was there. The woman hesitated. She could feel the tension building in the air, thick and heavy, like a storm about to break. She wasn't afraid of showing ID. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the way he looked at her, like she was guilty before proven innocent. Still, she kept her composure. Slowly, she reached into her purse, careful to move in a way that didn't alarm him. But even her calm movement seemed to irritate the officer. "Hurry up," he barked. "Don't try anything funny." A few cars passed by on the street, but no one stopped. The parking lot was still mostly empty, and the sound of her heartbeat echoed louder than anything else in her ears. She handed him her ID. He snatched it quickly, glancing down at the name. His flashlight flickered over the small card. The woman stood quietly, waiting, but the officer's expression didn't soften. He looked up from the ID with a cold stare. "This doesn't prove anything. I don't believe you belong here." Her jaw tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was being unreasonable, but she chose silence instead. She had learned long ago that sometimes silence spoke louder than words. The officer stepped even closer, invading her space. His flashlight now hovered inches from her face, blinding her. "Why are you really here?" he asked again, his tone sharper, more aggressive. She blinked against the light. "I told you. I'm going home." The officer didn't move. His presence was heavy, almost suffocating. The parking lot suddenly felt smaller, as if the walls of the night had closed in around her. Minutes passed like hours. The woman's calm expression masked her unease, but inside, questions spun in her mind. Why was this officer so hostile? Why did he assume she was a criminal when she was just trying to leave? She glanced briefly at the rows of parked cars, hoping someone else might appear. But the lot remained still and empty, save for the two of them. The officer's voice broke the silence again. "You know, people like you always think you can get away with things. Not on my watch." Her breath caught for a moment, but she didn't reply. She knew reacting would only escalate things further. The officer stepped closer, and his shadow loomed large over her. The beam of the flashlight still pinned her in place like a target. "Do you think I'm stupid?" he asked, his voice now low and menacing. "You think I can't tell when someone is lying?" The woman stood her ground, steady as stone. She looked him directly in the eyes and said calmly, I've told you the truth." For a second, something flickered in his gaze, anger, maybe even frustration. But it didn't fade. Instead, his jaw clenched. He leaned in closer, his breath warm against the cold night air. "I don't believe you." The woman's hand brushed against her purse again, almost instinctively. She knew she had more than just her ID inside. She knew she had something that would change everything, something he wasn't ready for. But not yet. Not now. The timing had to be perfect. Instead, she remained calm. Letting the tension stretch, the officer's patience began to thin. He shifted his stance, his hand moving away from the flashlight and closer to her. His grip hovered in the air like a threat. "I should take you in," he muttered. "You don't look like you belong here." Not one bit. The words stung, not because they were true, but because of the way he said them, so filled with judgment, so heavy with assumption. The woman swallowed slowly, her eyes never leaving his. She stood tall, refusing to cower, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. She knew something he didn't. A secret. A truth that would shatter his arrogance. But for now, she kept it hidden. The parking lot was still, the night holding its breath. The officer's grip tightened slightly on her arm, testing her. She didn't resist. She didn't pull away. Instead, she whispered softly, almost like a warning, "You really don't know who I am." The officer paused, confusion flickering across his face for the first time. But he shook it off quickly, replacing it with anger. "Doesn't matter who you are," he snapped. "Out here I'm the law." The woman's lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. Not one of amusement, but of quiet certainty. Because she knew the truth. And soon. So would he. The night pressed on, the silence growing heavier, the suspense tightening like a rope. The stage was set. The confrontation had only begun. The officer's grip on the woman's arm tightened. His fingers pressed hard against her skin, not enough to leave a mark yet, but enough to remind her that he had the power in this moment. His eyes, cold and piercing, searched her face as if he was looking for a reason to justify his anger. The parking lot was still. The hum of the streetlights seemed louder now, almost like the world itself was holding its breath. The woman remained calm, her posture steady. She did not raise her voice. She did not pull away. But the fire in her eyes grew stronger. "You don't belong here," the officer repeated, almost shouting now. "Tell me the truth, or I'll make you regret it." His words echoed across the empty lot. A couple walking in the distance slowed down, glancing toward the scene, but quickly turned away. Nobody wanted trouble. Nobody wanted to step into a fight with a uniformed officer. The woman inhaled deeply, then spoke in a firm, steady tone. "I told you already. I'm going home." Her calmness seemed to irritate him even more. He pulled her a step closer, his face inches from hers, his breath hot and impatient. "You think you're smart?" he growled. "You think standing there all quiet makes you innocent? I've been doing this job too long. I can see through liars," but she wasn't lying. She had told him the truth from the beginning. Still, no matter what she said, the officer's suspicion only grew. The woman studied him carefully. His uniform was neat, but his behavior was reckless. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anger that he couldn't explain. He was searching for something, a reason to justify his aggression, and she wasn't giving it to him. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the sharp whistle of the wind weaving through the rows of cars. Finally, the woman said softly, "You're making a mistake." The words hit him like a challenge. His jaw tightened. His grip on her arm grew harder, forcing her to wince for the first time. "A mistake?" he repeated bitterly. "The only mistake here is you being in this lot. People like you," he stopped mid-sentence, his voice dripping with unspoken judgment. She didn't reply. She stood there, refusing to let his words cut into her dignity. But inside, she felt her patience stretching thin. The officer glanced around, making sure no one else was close enough to hear. Then he leaned in, lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. "You're not going anywhere until I say so." Her heart pounded, but her face stayed calm. This was no longer just an encounter. This was becoming something far more dangerous. Her hand twitched near her purse again, but she stopped herself. Not yet. The time wasn't right. If she revealed her secret too soon, the lesson would be lost. He needed to dig his own grave first. A sudden sound broke the moment, the clatter of a glass bottle rolling across the pavement. Both turned their heads quickly. A young man in a hoodie had dropped his drink while walking past. He froze, staring at the scene, eyes wide. The officer barked, "Keep moving." The young man hesitated, then hurried away, his footsteps echoing in the distance. The woman's eyes followed him. For a second, she wished someone would stay. Someone would help. But deep down, she knew this was her fight to finish. The officer returned his gaze to her, his expression darker than before. "See that? Nobody cares. Nobody's going to save you. Out here, it's just you and me." The words were meant to intimidate, but they only fueled her quiet strength. She tilted her head slightly and said in a calm, almost chilling tone, "You really don't know who you're talking to." The officer's eyes narrowed. Confidence unsettled him, though he tried to hide it behind anger. "What are you? Some kind of lawyer? Some activist?" He sneered. "I don't care who you are. To me, you're just another suspect." The woman did not flinch. She looked him straight in the eye and answered, "And you're about to learn you're wrong." The tension tightened like a noose around them. Every second felt heavier, every breath sharper. The officer suddenly shoved her against the side of her car, the metal cold against her back. His hand pressed against her shoulder, keeping her pinned. "Don't test me," he warned. "I'll take you down right here if I have to." Her eyes burned with silent fury, but her voice stayed steady. "You're already crossing a line." His lips curled into a smirk, but it was shaky, as though he was unsure of himself. For the first time, he seemed rattled by her calm defiance. The sound of a phone camera clicked somewhere nearby. A man had started recording from behind another car. The officer noticed, his head snapping in that direction. His grip loosened just slightly, but not enough to free her. The woman noticed too. A small spark of hope flickered inside her. Someone was watching now. Someone would have proof. The officer growled under his breath, angry that his control was slipping. "Don't think this changes anything," he muttered. "I'm still in charge here." The woman's eyes softened, almost pitying him. "Not for long," she whispered. Her words echoed louder than the wind, louder than the hum of the streetlights. They carried a weight that unsettled the officer. He stared at her, suspicion mixing with confusion. Something about her confidence didn't make sense. She wasn't acting like a victim. She wasn't begging for mercy. She wasn't afraid, and that scared him more than anything else. The night stretched on, the shadows thickening around them. The woman stood firm, her secret still hidden, her badge still untouched inside her purse. But the moment of truth was coming closer. The officer didn't know it yet, but every step he took deeper into his anger was one step closer to his downfall. And she was ready. The silence returned once again, heavy and suffocating. Both of them stood locked in a silent battle, neither willing to back down. The woman's heart beat steady. The officer's breath grew heavier. The tension in the lot was unbearable. And just as the officer leaned in once more, ready to say something threatening, the woman whispered quietly, almost like a promise, "This will not end the way you think." The officer's eyes widened slightly. But before he could respond, the night was broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. The footsteps that echoed across the lot grew louder, but the officer didn't turn to see who it was. His attention was locked on the woman standing in front of him. His jaw tightened, his temper boiling. The woman, however, stood calm, her chest rising and falling in slow control. She had felt fear before in her life, but tonight it wasn't fear that filled her heart. It was patience. Patience could be more powerful than anger. The officer's eyes burned with frustration. The longer she stood silent and strong, the more unsettled he became. It was as if her very calmness was mocking him. He took one sharp step forward and growled, "You think you can just stand there and ignore me? You think this is a game?" The woman didn't move. "I don't think it's a game," she said quietly. "But I do think you're making a mistake." Her words were like a spark to his temper. He snapped. In one swift motion, his hand shot out and grabbed her by the throat. The force pushed her back against her car, her body hitting the metal with a dull thud. The cold surface pressed against her back as his fingers tightened around her neck. For the first time, the woman gasped, struggling for breath. The parking lot that had been silent moments ago now exploded with tension. The man recording from a distance raised his phone higher, zooming in. Another couple gasped, frozen in shock, not daring to move closer, but unable to look away. The officer's grip grew harder. His face hovered close, his voice a harsh whisper. "Don't test me. Don't think you can outsmart me. Out here, I control everything." The woman's hands instinctively reached up to his arm, but she didn't claw or fight. Instead, she pushed gently, just enough to show resistance, not enough to provoke more violence. Her eyes stayed locked on his, even as his hand cut in two. Her skin, even as her breath grew shallow, she refused to look away. "You're crossing a line," she managed to whisper, her voice strained. Her calmness only fueled his rage. "You don't tell me where the line is," he shouted, his voice carrying across the lot. The people watching whispered among themselves. Some pulled out their phones, others debated calling for help. The air was filled with murmurs, gasps, and the faint sound of camera shutters clicking. But the officer didn't care. His pride had blinded him. He was too far gone to notice the crowd. The woman's vision blurred slightly, her lungs burning for air. But still, her hand inched slowly toward her purse. The movement was subtle, hidden by the angle of her body against the car. Inside her purse, the cold edge of metal touched her fingers. Not a weapon, not a defense. Something far more powerful. Something that would end this entire confrontation in a heartbeat. But she held back. Not yet. Not until the moment was right. The officer leaned in closer, his voice trembling with rage. "You don't belong here. People like you never belong here." The words cut deeper than his grip. The crowd reacted with gasps. Someone shouted, "Let her go!" But their voice was drowned by the tension. The woman's lips trembled, but not from fear. From determination. She used the little air she had left to whisper again. "You have no idea who I am." Her words made him pause for half a second, his grip loosening just slightly. Confusion flickered in his eyes. Who was she? She'll speak with such certainty? But his pride wouldn't let him stop. He clenched tighter again, forcing her to cough and struggle. The crowd grew louder now, phones pointed directly at him. One man yelled, "You're on camera, officer." The officer's head snapped toward the voice, his anger breaking into panic for a brief second. But he quickly turned back to the woman, tightening his grip once more. As though proving to himself that he still had control, the woman's purse slipped slightly down her arm, almost opening. The faint glimmer of metal inside caught the light from the street lamp. No one noticed, no one except her. Her eyes narrowed. The time was close. Very close. The officer hissed. "Say one more word and see what happens." She coughed, her voice hoarse but steady. "Fine. One word." Her hand pressed firmly inside her purse. Her fingers curled around the small leather holder. The crowd leaned forward, sensing something was about to happen. The officer's anger burned hotter. His grip wavered, his body trembling with a mix of rage and fear.
Ow.
The woman's lips parted again. And then from the corner of the lot, headlights swept across the cars. Another vehicle was pulling in. A bright beam cut through the darkness, shining directly on the scene. The officer froze, caught in the light like a criminal himself. The woman coughed again, pulling in a sharp breath as his grip loosened for just a second.
Ow.
Her eyes met his, and in that single moment, a silent promise passed between them. "It's over. You just don't know it yet." The headlights from the car lit up the parking lot, casting sharp shadows across the pavement. For a brief moment, the officer loosened his grip, blinking against the sudden brightness. The woman gasped, pulling in a deep breath as the cold air rushed back into her lungs. The vehicle slowed and parked at the far end of the lot. The driver stepped out, a young man with a backpack slung over one shoulder. He froze the instant he saw what was happening. His eyes widened. A police officer's hand around a woman's throat, crowd forming at the edges. Phones lifted, tension thick in the air. The young man hesitated, then quietly pulled out his phone too. Another witness. Another set of eyes. Another camera capturing the truth. The officer noticed. His jaw clenched tight, his face flushed with frustration. He barked across the lot. "Keep walking. This doesn't concern you." But the man didn't move. He just stood there, phone in hand, recording silently. Whispers rippled through the crowd. At first, there had been only 1 or 2 onlookers. Now there were more. 5, 10. A small group gathering near the sidewalk, drawn in by the shouting and the sound of struggle. Some whispered, "He's choking her." Others muttered, "What's going on? Why is he doing this?" Every second more people lifted their phones, the red dots of recording lights glowing in the dark. The woman, still pressed against her car, coughed but kept her composure. She raised her chin slightly, her voice soft but steady. "You see they're watching? Everything you do now. Everyone will know." Her words cut through him like a blade. The officer's eyes darted around, seeing the phones, the faces, the witnesses. His hand trembled on her throat, not out of pity, but out of fear of losing control, fear of being exposed. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. Instead, he barked louder, trying to drown out the whispers. "She's resisting arrest. Everyone back away." The crowd gasped. They had seen everything. She hadn't resisted. She had barely moved. His words sounded empty, desperate. Someone shouted back, "That's a lie." "We saw it all." Another voice joined, "Let her go." The officer's anger flared. His face turned red, his voice cracked with rage. He tightened his grip again, pressing her harder against the car as though to prove he still had power. But the woman didn't flinch. Even with the crowd watching, even with his hand on her throat, she stared at him with unshakable eyes. Her calmness only made him unravel further. "You don't get it, do you?" he growled, his voice trembling. "Out here, I decide who's guilty." The crowd erupted with shouts. "This is wrong. You can't do that. We're recording everything." Phones flashed. Cameras zoomed. The whispers turned to angry cries. The young man with the backpack stepped closer, voice firm but controlled. "Everyone's watching you now. You should stop before it's too late." The officer spun his head toward him, shouting, "Step back. This is police business." But the words rang hollow. The authority he thought he had was slipping through his fingers. Every witness, every camera, every whisper chipped away at his power. The woman's hand slid slowly, carefully back, toward her purse. Her fingers brushed the smooth leather again, feeling the weight of what was inside. She could end this now. She could pull it out and change everything. But no, not yet. Her patience remained strong. She wanted him to bury himself deeper. She wanted every witness to see his true face before the truth came out. The officer's voice cracked again. "She's dangerous. She's hiding something?" The crowd laughed bitterly, disbelief spreading. One woman shouted, "Dangerous. She's standing there calm while you're choking her." Another man yelled, "You're the dangerous one." The officer's chest heaved. His pride fought against reality. His hand trembled against her neck, the weight of the crowd's judgment pressing heavier than any badge he wore. And still, she looked at him with those steady eyes, unblinking, unshaken. "You've already lost," she whispered. The words froze him. His heart raced. He looked around, his vision blurring. Every face he saw was an enemy now. Every camera a weapon. Every whisper a dagger in his pride. "Stop recording," he screamed. "All of you. Put your phones away." But no one listened. In fact, more phones rose. More voices shouted. The crowd had grown to nearly 20 people, circling closer, their courage building with each passing second. The woman inhaled slowly, even against his grip. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence that followed his outburst, everyone heard her clearly. "You don't know who I am? But you're about to find out." The crowd gasped. The officer froze. Her words carried a weight that unsettled him. Who was she? Why wasn't she afraid? Why did she speak as though she held the real power? His grip faltered for just a moment. The crowd saw it. The whispers grew louder. "She's someone important. She's not scared at all. What if she's undercover? The officer shook his head violently, trying to silence the doubts. He shouted again, voice breaking. She's lying. She's nobody. But even he didn't believe his own words anymore. The woman's purse slipped fully into her hand now, the leather cool against her palm. Her fingers tightened around it. The time was almost here. The officer's eyes darted between her and the crowd, his world spinning out of control. Sweat dripped down his forehead. His voice was shaky when he whispered to her alone, so low that only she could hear. "Who are you?" Her lips curled into the faintest smile. A smile that held secrets. A smile that promised the truth was close. But she didn't answer. Not yet. The silence stretched again. The officer's chest rose and fell in sharp, angry breaths. The crowd murmured, their voices like waves crashing all around him, and then from behind the crowd. Another shout rang out. A new voice, firm, clear, authority carried in every word. "Step away from her now." The entire lot went silent. The officer froze. The woman lifted her head slightly, her eyes gleaming. The crowd turned as one to see who had spoken. The sharp voice echoed across the parking lot. "Step away from her now." The officer froze. His grip loosened slightly, and his head turned toward the sound. The crowd parted slowly, every phone still raised. Every eye locked on the tense scene. From the far side of the lot, an older man stepped forward. He wore no uniform, no badge, just a plain jacket and jeans. But his voice carried authority, steady and commanding. The officer blinked, his face tight with anger. "Stay out of this," he barked. The man didn't flinch. He took another step closer. "You've already gone too far. Everyone can see it." The crowd murmured in agreement. Someone shouted, "Let her go." Another voice added, "We're all recording." The officer's jaw clenched. He looked back at the woman pinned against the car. Her eyes never left his. Calm, steady, silent. That silence cut deeper than any insult could have. Because silence meant control. And right now, she had all of it. Her throat burned from his grip. But she stood tall, her chin raised slightly, her eyes unshaken. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She didn't beg, she simply was, and that quiet presence made the officer tremble with rage. He leaned in close, trying to regain control. His voice was a low growl meant for her alone. "You think standing still makes you strong? You think that silence means you win?" Her lips parted slightly. She whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "It means I don't need to fight you to win." The words hit him harder than any shove could. "Have?" The crowd was restless now. Some were shouting, some whispering. The man in the jacket moved a step closer again, his phone raised high. "I said let her go." The officer's grip shook. Sweat slid down his temple. His pride battled against the storm around him. The world he controlled just minutes ago was collapsing. And yet, the woman stood calm, her presence like stone in the middle of chaos. One woman in the crowd shouted, "She's not afraid of you." The officer's face flushed red. He tightened his grip again, pressing harder, almost desperate. "You think this makes you brave?" He hissed. "You're just another suspect. You're nobody." But even as he said it, his voice cracked. His words rang hollow. The woman coughed, pulling in what breath she could, then spoke softly. "If I were nobody, why are you so afraid of me?" The crowd gasped. The words cut through the night like thunder. The officer's eyes widened. But he quickly shook his head, denying what he felt inside. "I'm not afraid of you," he barked, his voice too loud, too desperate. But his hand trembled. His power slipped further with every passing second. The woman's purse was now firmly in her grasp. She could end this right now. But she held back again. She wanted him to fall by his own hands, to let the world see his weakness before she revealed her truth. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need to fight. She didn't need to break his grip. Her strength was silence, and that silence spoke louder than the officer's shouts. Louder than the crowd's cries, louder than the buzzing lamps above them. The young man with the backpack called out, "Everyone's watching you, officer. You'll regret this." The officer turned his head sharply, roaring back, "Shut up. This is none of your business." But he was wrong. It was everyone's business now. The crowd had grown larger. At least 30 people stood around, phones high, anger thick in the air. The officer looked around frantically, his breathing heavy, his control slipping. His hand on her throat was no longer steady, and then, for the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. He looked down at the woman, still pinned against the car. She hadn't moved. She hadn't fought. She hadn't screamed, but she had one. Her calm stare said it all. She wasn't the victim here. He was. The silence between them broke again, as she whispered, "You're not in control anymore." The officer's chest tightened. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. The weight of the crowd, the cameras, the whisper sit was crushing him. He loosened his grip slightly, just slightly, but enough for her to take in a deep breath. She straightened her shoulders, her calm presence unshaken. The man in the jacket shouted again, "Let her go, officer." "Now," the crowd roared in agreement. "Let her go. You can't do this. We're calling your chief." The officer's pride burned hotter. He couldn't back down now, in front of all these people. His career, his image, his authority, everything was slipping away. He leaned close to her ear and whispered harshly, "If you think they can save you, you're wrong. Nobody saves you tonight." The woman turned her head slightly, her lips close to his ear. Her voice was low, steady, unshaken. "I don't need saving. I've already won." The officer pulled back, his face pale, his anger mixed with fear. The crowd shouted louder. Phones zoomed closer. Every second was being recorded, every breath, every word, and then the sound of sirens pierced the night. Blue and red lights flashed at the far end of the lot. Police cars pulled in, their headlights sweeping across the crowd. The officer's heart sank. His grip faltered completely. The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile, because now the truth was about to come out. The sirens cut through the night like a blade. Red and blue lights danced across the cars, bouncing off windows. Washing over the faces of the stunned crowd, 2 squad cars pulled into the lot, their engines rumbling, tires screeching slightly as they came to a stop. The officer's heart dropped. His grip on the woman's throat faltered completely. He pulled his hand back, stepping away quickly as if nothing had happened. His chest heaved, sweat dripping down his temple. The woman coughed, straightening slowly. Her hand went to her throat, but her eyes never left him, calm, steady, silent. The crowd erupted in shouts. He grabbed her. We saw everything. "It's all on video." Phones flashed, voices rose. The parking lot became a storm of chaos. The officer turned in panic as 2 uniformed cops stepped out of the first car. They looked around, confused by the shouting and flashing lights. "What's going on here?" one of them demanded. The angry crowd shouted all at once. He attacked her. He grabbed her by the throat. She didn't do anything. The officers looked from the crowd to the man standing near the woman. He looked disheveled, nervous, guilty. His face was pale under the harsh lights. One of the backup cops narrowed his eyes. "Officer, explain yourself." The corrupt officer straightened his shoulders, forcing confidence back into his voice. She was resisting, acting suspicious. "I was handling the situation." The crowd exploded in outrage. "That's a lie. We saw everything." He was choking her. The woman raised her hand slowly. She didn't speak right away. She simply waited, and just like before, her silence was louder than the shouting crowd. The backup officers glanced at her. Even bruised, even coughing from his grip, she stood tall, steady, calm. The corrupt officer noticed their hesitation. He barked louder, desperate now. "She's dangerous." "She refused to answer my questions." He stopped mid-sentence when the woman finally spoke. Her voice was calm, clear, steady, careful with your words. "Officer." The entire crowd went silent. Her tone wasn't angry. It wasn't weak. It was commanding. The kind of voice that carried weight, authority. The corrupt officer froze, blinking at her. What? What are you talking about? He muttered. She stepped forward, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. Her purse hung at her side, her grip firm on it. Her chin lifted slightly. You've already crossed one line tonight, she said slowly, her eyes locked on his. Don't make the mistake of crossing another. The crowd murmured in shock. The backup officers glanced at each other, confused, curious. The corrupt officer's face tightened. His pride fought against the tremor of fear in his chest. He raised his voice again, trying to drown her out. You don't tell me what to do? He snapped. You're nobody here. The woman tilted her head slightly, her lips curling in the faintest smile. Then why do you look so afraid of a nobody? The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, she's not ordinary. She's someone important? The officer stepped closer, his voice trembling now. If you try to threaten me, I swear. Her eyes sharpened, her voice low and steady. I don't need to threaten you. I'm giving you a warning. The words dropped heavy into the air. Chilling the crowd into silence again, the backup officers shifted uncomfortably. They had no idea who she was, but something in her tone made them hesitate. She didn't sound like a victim. She didn't sound like a suspect. She sounded like authority. The corrupt officer swallowed hard, his fists clenching. His pride screamed at him to fight back, but his gut twisted with dread. The woman took one slow step closer. The crowd leaned forward, holding its breath. Her hand brushed her purse again, fingers curling around the leather strap. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Dot, dot. But it carried across the lot as if the night itself wanted everyone to hear. Last chance, officer. Step back. Before you lose everything. The corrupt officer's face went pale. The crowd exploded in whispers. What does she mean? Who is she? Why does she sound like she's in charge? The sirens still flashed. The backup officers still stood frozen. Svard and the corrupt officer's pride clashed with his fear. For the first time that night, he felt it. The truth pressing against him like a storm about to break. He wasn't the one in control anymore. The air in the parking lot was thick with tension. The red and blue sirens painted shifting shadows across every face. The crowd whispered restlessly, torn between outrage and curiosity. The corrupt officer's chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. He glared at the woman, his pride pushing him to speak, but his fear chaining him in silence. The woman stood tall, calm, her fingers brushing the strap of her purse. Her voice had already shaken the crowd. But what she was about to do next would change everything. One of the backup officers stepped forward, his brow furrowed. Ma'am, we need to understand what's happening here. Who are you? The corrupt officer snapped. Don't listen to her. She's lying. She's nothing. But his voice cracked. His eyes betrayed him. Even he no longer believed his own words. The crowd murmured louder. She's not ordinary. She talks like she's in charge. What's in her purse? The woman took a slow breath, then reached into her bag. The corrupt officer's eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. He stepped forward, shouting, Don't you dare. The crowd gasped. Phones zoomed in closer. The man in the jacket whispered, Here it comes. Her hand moved deliberately, calmly. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't hiding. She wanted every eye to see, and then she pulled out a small leather case, black, polished, official. The crowd fell silent. She held it at her side for a moment, letting the weight of it settle in the air. The corrupt officer froze, his face pale, his lips trembling. He knew that shape. He knew that case. The backup officers exchanged sharp glances. One whispered, No way. Finally, she raised it slowly, holding it chest high, but not fully opening it yet. Just enough for the leather to catch the flashing lights. Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. People leaned forward, straining to see. The corrupt officer stepped back instinctively, his voice breaking. You can't be. The woman's eyes locked on him. Her voice was steady, calm, powerful. You said I was nobody? You said I didn't belong here. She tapped the case lightly with her finger. Do you want to say that again? The crowd erupted. She has a badge. She's an officer too. No, she's more than that. The corrupt officer staggered back another step, his pride collapsing. His hand twitched at his belt, but he didn't dare move. The backup officer stood frozen, unsure whether to step in or stand down. The man in the jacket whispered to the people near him, "She hasn't even opened it yet. She's holding back." And that was the most chilling part. She hadn't revealed everything. She was only showing a glimpse. The woman lowered the case slowly, her eyes never leaving the officers. "This isn't over," she said softly. "But now you know what line you've crossed." The crowd shivered at her words. Even without the badge fully revealed, the truth was already shaking the lot to its core. The corrupt officer's voice cracked as he whispered, "No. No, this can't be happening." The woman slid the case back into her purse with deliberate calm. She didn't need to flash it. Not yet. The fear on his face was enough. Her silence, her control, her strength, it all spoke louder than the case itself. And as the sirens flashed and the crowd roared in disbelief, the corrupt officer realized something terrifying. His career, his power, his very future was slipping out of his hands. The parking lot was no longer quiet. Voices overlapped, phones stayed high, and the red-blue flashes painted everything in a restless glow. But in the center of all the noise, two figures stood locked in silence. The woman with calm eyes and the officer whose pride was cracking. He could feel the weight of the crowd pressing on him. Every shout, every whisper, every lens pointed his way was like a nail in his chest. "Show it to us." Someone from the crowd yelled, "Open it! Let him see what he's done." Another voice echoed. The woman didn't move. Her purse rested calmly against her side, the small leather case hidden inside again. She didn't need to prove anything. Not yet. The corrupt officer's hands shook. His chest rose and fell in fast bursts. Sweat rolled down his temple. He barked suddenly, his voice too loud, too broken. "She's lying. She's trying to trick you all. She's nobody, just pretending." The words didn't land. The crowd only grew louder, their disbelief rising. "She's not pretending. You grabbed her throat. We saw it. You're finished, man." The backup officers shifted uneasily. They weren't moving to defend him. They weren't moving at all. Their eyes flicked between the calm woman and the trembling man who wore the same uniform as them. And that silence, that hesitation, broke something inside him, he snapped. With a roar, he pointed at her. "Arrest her. Right now. She's resisting. She's a threat." But no one moved. The backup officers stayed frozen. The crowd booed loudly, some even stepping forward. A teenage boy shouted, "You're the only threat here." The officer's face twisted. His voice cracked again. "Do it! Don't just stand there." Still no one obeyed. And then came her voice, calm, cold, cutting. "Look around you, officer. Do you see anyone willing to follow you?" The words struck harder than a fist. His eyes darted to the other officers, to the crowd, to the phones recording every second. He realized in horror that he was standing alone. The woman stepped closer. Just one step, but it was enough to make him flinch. She lowered her voice so only he could hear, though the crowd leaned in, desperate to catch her words. "This is the moment where you decide what kind of man you are. But let me give you a warning." Her eyes locked with his, steady, unshaken. "You've already lost." The officer staggered back a step, his pride crumbling. He looked wild, cornered, like an animal trapped. His breaths came out in short, broken bursts. No, I can fix this. I can fix this," he muttered to himself, though his voice shook. The crowd sensed it. The man in the jacket whispered loudly, "It's breaking," and he was. For the first time that night, the officer's mask of control shattered. He wasn't the one in power anymore. He wasn't feared. He wasn't respected. He was exposed. The woman didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She simply watched him fall apart, her silence steady, her presence unshaken. Her hand brushed her purse again, the faint outline of the leather case pressing against the fabric. She didn't need to reveal it yet. She was waiting. waiting for the exact moment when it would crush him completely. The officer's voice cracked again, desperate now. She's bluffing. She has to be. She can't be who I think she is. But even as he said the words, his face betrayed the truth. He knew. Deep down, he already knew. And that knowledge was destroying him from the inside. The woman tilted her head slightly, her lips curving into the faintest smile. She spoke softly, but her words carried through the tense night air. This is your breaking point. Choose wisely. The crowd gasped, sensing the shift. The corrupt officer stood trembling, broken between fear and pride, seconds away from a collapse. And then from the corner of the lot, another car pulled in. Its headlights swept across the scene, and the entire crowd turned in surprise. The woman's calm expression didn't falter. If anything, her eyes grew sharper, as if she had been expecting this moment. The corrupt officer's stomach dropped. His worst fear was about to walk out of that car. The parking lot glowed red and blue, sirens painting restless shadows across the scene. The corrupt officer stood trembling, sweat dripping from his brow, his chest rising and falling as though every breath cost him. The woman stood calm, her purse still at her side. Her eyes locked on him with quiet power. Then the headlights of the approaching car swept across the lot. The crowd fell silent, turning toward it. The hum of its engine grew louder as it rolled slowly into the space, just behind the backup patrol cars. The corrupt officer's face turned pale. His throat tightened. His fists clenched nervously at his sides. Not him. Anyone but him, his mind screamed. The car door opened. A tall figure stepped out, the light catching the silver streaks in his hair. He wore no hat, no sunglasses, nothing to hide who he was. The crowd gasped. Is that? It's the captain. No way he came here himself. The corrupt officer stumbled backward, his pride collapsing. His superior, his commanding officer, was standing right there. The captain's eyes swept the lot, taking in the flashing phones. The crowd pressed forward, and finally, the two central figures, the trembling officer and the calm woman. What on earth is going on here? His voice was firm, sharp, commanding. The backup officer straightened instantly. Sir, we responded to a disturbance, but one stammered. He stopped, unsure how to explain. The crowd erupted at once. He grabbed her. He attacked her. She didn't do anything. It's all on video. The captain raised his hand, silencing them. His sharp gaze fell on the corrupt officer. Is this true? The officer's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His lips trembled, his throat dry. Finally, he managed to stammer, Sir, she was resisting. Suspicious behavior. I was controlling the situation? The crowd booed loudly. Liar, we saw everything. Check the videos. The captain's jaw tightened. He turned to the woman, his expression softening slightly. Ma'am, is that correct? The woman didn't rush to answer. She let the silence stretch, every second adding to the weight pressing down on the corrupt officer. Finally, she tilted her head slightly, her voice calm but commanding. He doesn't realize what situation he's in, she said. Softly, the captain's brow furrowed. The crowd leaned in, curious. The corrupt officer snapped suddenly, his voice cracking. She's lying, sir. She's nobody. She's making herself look important. But the captain didn't respond. His eyes were still on the woman. Something about her calmness, her presence, made him hesitate. Made him respect her without even knowing who she was. The woman's hand brushed her purse again. She could end this right now, with one simple motion. But instead, she gave the officer one last chance. You've been warned once, she said quietly. Her eyes locked on him. Now, you're standing in front of your captain. Choose your words carefully. The officer's knees almost buckled. He felt trapped, cornered, crushed by her calm power in the captain's presence. The captain narrowed his eyes. What does she mean, officer? What haven't you told me? The crowd whispered wildly. She knows something. She's more powerful than she looks. He's scared to death of her. The corrupt officer's lips trembled. His pride screamed for him to keep lying, but his fear made his voice weak. She can't be who she says she is. She's bluffing. The woman tilted her head, her faint smile returning. Do you really want to test that theory? In front of your captain? The officer's eyes widened in panic. His chest heaved. His pride was cracking, his control slipping faster than ever. The captain turned sharply, his voice stern. Enough. I want the truth. Right now, the woman's fingers curled tighter around her purse. The leather case inside pressed firmly against her hand. The crowd leaned forward, phones raised, breath held, because everyone knew the moment was finally coming. The woman was about to reveal who she really is. The parking lot was so silent that even the buzzing of the street lamps seemed loud. Dozens of phones stayed pointed, recording every second. The corrupt officer's chest heaved. His breath sharp and uneven. His eyes darted from the crowd to his captain, and finally back to the woman who still stood calm and unshaken. The captain's voice broke the silence. I'll ask again. What is going on here? The officer opened his mouth, but no words came. His lips trembled, his hands clenched, and his pride bled out with every second. The woman finally moved. Slowly, deliberately. She reached into her purse. The crowd gasped, phones zooming closer. Every eye widened, waiting. The corrupt officer shouted, panic cracking his voice. Don't you dare. But she ignored him. Her hand emerged, holding the small black leather case. The polished surface gleamed under the flashing red-blue lights. The crowd erupted in whispers. She has it again. That's a badge case. I knew it. The officer staggered back, shaking his head violently. No, she can't. It's not real. But the woman said nothing. She simply lifted the case chest high. Her eyes locked firmly on his dot, and then she flipped it open. Gasps spread like wildfire inside. The badge shone under the harsh lights, the emblem unmistakable, the weight undeniable. It wasn't a regular officer's badge. It was higher. Federal. The backup officers stiffened. Their faces went pale. The crowd erupted in shocked cries. She's federal. Oh my God, she outranks him. No wonder she wasn't afraid. The captain himself froze. His eyes widened, his lips parting in disbelief. He stepped forward, voice trembling slightly. Special agent. The woman finally spoke, her voice calm, clear, cutting through the chaos. That's right. She turned her gaze to the corrupt officer, who stood trembling, broken, his pride scattered. You assaulted a federal agent tonight. In front of witnesses? On camera? The crowd gasped again. Phones shook in hands as people leaned closer, desperate to capture every word. The corrupt officer's knees buckled slightly. His face drained of color. He stammered, I didn't know. I didn't. The woman's voice cut him off, sharp as glass. You didn't care. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The captain swallowed hard, glancing at the crowd, then back at her. Ma'am, agent, is this true? He put his hands on you? Her eyes didn't leave the trembling officer. He did, and not just his hands. He showed his pride, his prejudice, his corruption. All of it. The crowd cheered, voices rising. Arrest him! Take his badge. He's finished. The corrupt officer shook his head wildly, sweat pouring down his face. No, I didn't know who she was. The woman stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. She leaned in just slightly, her eyes locked on his. You should treat every person with respect, officer, not just the ones you fear. The crowd roared. The officer's legs gave way. He stumbled back, collapsing against his own patrol car, his hands covering his face. His career, his pride, his life, shattered. The captain's voice was heavy when he spoke. Officer, you're done. The crowd exploded in cheers, phones flashing like fireworks. But the woman didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She simply closed her badge case, sliding it back into her purse with calm precision. Her eyes lingered on him one last time. This was your warning. Next time, there won't be one. The corrupt officer trembled, broken beyond words. The night air was thick with tension, but also with something new: respect. The crowd looked at her not as a victim, not as a stranger, but as someone who had revealed true power in silence. And yet, as calm as she looked, her eyes carried something deeper, something she hadn't revealed yet. Because this night was only the beginning. The parking lot was still buzzing with noise. People cheered, phones stayed high in the air, and whispers rippled through the crowd like waves. Everyone thought the story was over. The corrupt officer sat slumped against his car, his face pale, his hands trembling. His career was finished, his reputation destroyed. The captain stood near him, shaking his head in disappointment. The woman now revealed as a federal agent remained calm. She had closed her badge case and slipped it back into her purse, as if the reveal had cost her nothing. But her eyes were sharp, focused. She wasn't finished. The captain stepped closer. His voice was low, cautious. "Agent, I must admit I didn't expect this. But why were you here tonight?" Surely it wasn't chance. The crowd quieted, ears straining to hear her reply. The woman's gaze didn't shift from the trembling officer. No, it wasn't chance. Gasps spread. The crowd murmured, "What does she mean? She came here on purpose." There's more to this. The corrupt officer's head snapped up, his eyes wide. His lips moved soundlessly, like he wanted to ask but couldn't. Fear gnawed at him. The captain frowned. "Then, what were you here for?" The woman turned finally, her voice calm, but carrying a weight that made everyone fall silent. "I was watching him." The corrupt officer froze. "Me." His voice cracked like dry wood. The woman nodded once. "Yes, you." The crowd erupted again. She was investigating him. He was being watched all along. She knew what he was. The officer's face turned bright red. "That's a lie? You're making this up?" But the woman ignored his outburst. She spoke only to the captain now. "I had reports, complaints, whispers that he used his badge for control, not justice. I needed to see it myself. And tonight, I did." The captain's face darkened with shame. He turned sharply to the officer. "Is this true? Is that why you were so reckless?" The officer stammered, his words tumbling out. "No, I was doing my duty." "She's twisting everything." Enough." The captain's tone silenced him instantly. The woman stepped closer, her presence dominating the lot. "You see, Captain, this wasn't about a parking lot. It wasn't about me walking to my car. It was about him. About what he's been hiding." The crowd leaned in, breathless. The officer shook his head violently. No, please, you don't understand." The woman's eyes locked on him, sharp and unblinking. "Then explain why your name appeared on a file I've been following for months." The crowd gasped in shock. The captain stiffened. The officer's mouth fell open. His face turned ashen. No, you can't know about that." The woman's voice was ice. "Oh, I do." Phones shook as the crowd tried to capture every second of the unfolding drama. The officer's secret was cracking open, right there in the flashing lights. The captain swallowed hard. "Agent, what file are you talking about?" The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile. Not of joy, but of certainty. "You'll know soon enough." Her calmness unsettled everyone. The officer collapsed further against his car, muttering under his breath. Shaking his head as if the weight of his hidden crimes were finally crushing him, the crowd whispered urgently, "What's in the file? What did he do? This is bigger than we thought." The night air grew heavier, the suspense thicker. Because now, everyone knew this wasn't just about an attack in a parking lot. This was about a hidden mission. A mission that was only just beginning. The parking lot had gone silent again. The siren still flashed, but no one moved. No one spoke above a whisper. Every pair of eyes stayed fixed on the woman. The corrupt officer pressed his back against the car, his chest heaving, his lips trembling as he muttered under his breath, No, this can't be happening." The captain's voice was sharp, controlled, but strained. "Agent, what file are you referring to?" The woman's gaze never left the officer. Her words were slow, deliberate. "An internal file. A case that should have been closed long ago. But somehow, his name keeps showing up." The crowd stirred uneasily. "What case? What does she mean?" "He's dirty?" The officer snapped suddenly, his voice loud and cracked. "She's lying. She's trying to ruin me. None of this is true." But his panic only made the crowd believe her more. Phones zoomed in on his face, capturing every bead of sweat, every twitch of fear. The captain narrowed his eyes. "Why wasn't I informed about this, Agent? If my officer is under investigation—" "You weren't informed because the corruption runs deep," she interrupted firmly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The captain froze, his jaw tightening. He glanced at the other backup officers, who now looked uneasy. Shifting on their feet, the woman continued, her tone cold, precise. "This officer isn't just careless. He isn't just arrogant. His name appeared in connection with missing evidence, unfiled reports, and complaints that mysteriously disappeared." The officer's face turned red. "That's not true. Those complaints were fake. Those people hated the police." The woman raised a hand slightly, silencing him with nothing more than her presence. "Do you really want me to list the dates? The names? Right here, in front of everyone?" The officer's throat went dry. He stumbled over his words. You can't." But his eyes said it all. The crowd shouted in outrage. "He's been hiding things." He covered it up. "She knows the truth." The captain's face grew hard. His voice was tight. "If this is real, Agent, then my entire department is at risk." The woman turned slowly toward him, her eyes unblinking. "It already is." Silence fell again. The weight of her words pressed down on everyone, even the cheering crowd. For the first time, they understood this wasn't just a simple abuse of power. It was bigger. Much bigger. The officer's hands shook as he whispered desperately, "Please, don't say it." The woman's voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut through him. "I won't say it. Not tonight. But the file doesn't lie. And neither do the victims." The crowd gasped again. People muttered urgently, "There are victims? This goes deeper. What else has he done?" The captain swallowed hard, his eyes flickering between the woman and his broken officer. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "Agent, what happens now?" The woman's expression softened only slightly. She closed her purse, stepping back as if to retreat into shadow. "What happens now is that the truth will come out. Whether he's ready for it or not." Her words struck like thunder. The corrupt officer collapsed to his knees, his voice breaking. No, please." "You don't understand?" But the crowd wasn't listening anymore. They were chanting now, furious, relentless. "Expose him. Show the file. Justice. Justice." The woman glanced at them once, her face unreadable. Then her eyes returned to the captain. "I'll deliver the file when the time is right. For now, he knows his time is over." The officer shook violently, his hands covering his face. His body sagged as though the weight of his secrets had finally crushed him. The crowd shouted louder. The captain stood frozen, torn between loyalty to his department and the undeniable truth unfolding before him, and the woman calm. Controlled, untouchable, turned slightly toward the shadows of the parking lot. Her eyes glimmered with something the crowd couldn't name, because she knew this was only the surface. The file held darker truths than anyone here could imagine. The night air grew heavy,
almost electric.
The crowd no longer just watched, they leaned in, their voices whispering, their eyes wide with hunger for the truth. The corrupt officer stayed on his knees, trembling, his face hidden behind shaking hands. His body sagged like he had no fight left. The woman, calm as ever, stood like a shadow of authority. She didn't need to speak. Her silence was louder than his desperate cries. Then, from the middle of the crowd, a voice broke through. "I remember him." The crowd turned. A man stepped forward, his face lined with exhaustion, his voice rough. He raised his hand slowly, pointing at the corrupt officer. He stopped me one night. Said I looked suspicious. Took my wallet. Said I could have it back if I kept quiet. Gasps rippled through the people. Phone swung toward the man, recording his every word. The officer's head snapped up. Lies, all lies. His voice was wild, almost hysterical, but the man didn't flinch. He stared directly at the captain. I filed a complaint. Weeks later, I was told it disappeared. Nothing happened. No callback. No follow-up. Nothing. The captain's face hardened, shame pressing into his expression. Before he could answer, another voice rang out. A woman's voice, trembling but strong. He stopped my son. She stepped forward, tears in her eyes. My boy was walking home. He pushed him against the wall. Called him names. Threatened to lock him up if he argued. My son was 16. The crowd gasped louder. Some shouted angrily. Others cursed under their breath. The officer shook his head violently, screaming now. She's lying too. They're all lying. This is a setup. But the voices kept coming. A third person stepped forward. An older man, his cane tapping against the pavement. His voice was slow, but filled with pain. He broke my shop window. Said it was a search. Said I must be hiding something. I lost everything that night. Everything. Tears streamed down his face as the crowd murmured in shock and outrage. The corrupt officer's voice cracked, desperate. No, they hated me. They wanted me gone. This is all fake. But the people weren't listening anymore. Their voices rose together, furious, unstoppable. Justice. Liar. Enough is enough. The captain looked overwhelmed. His eyes darted from the crowd to the woman, his voice unsteady. Agent. This can't all be true, can it? The woman's eyes locked on his. Her voice was steady, sharp. It's worse than they know. These voices tonight are only the beginning. The file holds dozens more. The captain's shoulders sagged as the weight of her words settled on him. The crowd roared louder, some shouting for arrests, others crying in anger. The corrupt officer clutched his head, rocking slightly, as if the sound of their voices was breaking him apart piece by piece. The woman finally spoke again, her tone cutting through the chaos. The victims have spoken. The truth is here. The question now is, what will you do with it? Her words fell heavy on the captain, who stood frozen, trapped between loyalty to his badge and the undeniable cries for justice echoing. All around him, the night felt darker, heavier, and everyone knew this was no longer just about one officer. This was about every hidden voice in that file. The parking lot pulsed with noise phones flashing. Voices shouting, anger rising like a storm. The victims' words still echoed in the night air. Their pain and anger too real to ignore. The corrupt officer crouched on the ground, his body trembling, his face hidden. Every voice from the crowd had struck him like a blow, breaking him more than any punishment ever could, and the captain stood frozen. His chest rose and fell heavily. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. His eyes darted from his officer to the crowd that demanded justice. And finally to the woman, the federal agent, who stood tall and unshaken. He felt the weight of every badge in the department pressing down on him. What am I supposed to do? If he protected the officer, the crowd would erupt. Their trust would vanish forever. If he sided with the agent, he'd be admitting his own failure, that corruption had grown under his watch, right in his department. The crowd shouted louder, voices colliding. Fire him now! Arrest him. Don't protect him. The captain raised a hand, but his voice shook when he spoke. Enough. Silence. The noise died down, but the eyes didn't leave him. Every phone, every person, every victim waited for his decision. The woman's gaze locked on him, calm but heavy, as if she could see the storm raging inside him. You cannot stay in the middle, Captain, she said softly. You must choose. Her words cut deep. The captain looked down at the trembling officer. He remembered years of service patrols, late night shifts, the uniform they both wore. He remembered loyalty, brotherhood, the thin blue line. But then, he remembered the voices of the victims. The broken man with the cane, the mother with tears in her eyes, the young man who lost his dignity. He remembered the oath he had sworn to protect, to serve, to uphold the law, not just for his officers, but for everyone. The corrupt officer looked up at him then, his eyes wild, pleading. "Captain, please. You know me? You know, I'd never—" The captain's jaw tightened. His eyes burned with conflict. The crowd leaned in. The air was so heavy, it felt like the world itself had stopped breathing. The captain finally spoke. His voice, low but steady. "You have betrayed the badge." Gasps filled the air. The officer's face went white. He shook his head violently. "No, no, Captain, please. You can't do this to me." The captain's shoulders sagged with pain, but his words didn't waver. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed them." He motioned toward the victims, toward the crowd, toward the very people who once trusted the badge. The crowd erupted in cheers, some crying, some shouting in triumph, but the officer collapsed fully now, his body crumbling, his sobs shaking through the parking lot. "No, no, it's not fair." The captain's voice hardened. "Fair. Fair was what you took from them." The woman stepped forward, her eyes on the captain. "You've made your choice. Now let me finish mine." The captain met her gaze, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in his eyes. He nodded once, heavy with regret, but firm in resolve. The corrupt officer's cries grew weaker, strength fading as the weight of his crimes crushed him completely. The night air shifted. The crowd knew something irreversible had just happened. The captain had chosen justice over loyalty, but the woman's eyes still held something more, a deeper truth, a hidden danger that even the crowd didn't see yet, because this was not the end. It was only the turning point. The crowd was still buzzing with noise, but beneath the shouts of victory and anger was something else. Eyes. The corrupt officer lay slumped on the ground, broken, his face streaked with sweat and shame. The captain had turned away from him, no longer seeing an officer, but a disgrace, and the woman stood tall, her eyes sharp, her presence unshaken. She had won the crowd's respect. She had forced the captain to choose justice. But she wasn't done, not yet. The captain exhaled heavily, his voice low. "It's finished. He's done. The department will answer for this." The woman's gaze slid toward him, steady, almost cold. "You think it's finished?" The crowd fell silent again. Phones lifted higher. The captain frowned. "What do you mean?" Her words came slow, deliberate, carrying weight. "This man is not the root. He is only a branch. Cut one branch, another will grow." Gasps rippled through the people. The corrupt officer looked up suddenly, fear flashing in his eyes. His lips trembled as though he wanted to speak but couldn't. The captain's voice tightened. "Are you saying there are more?" The woman nodded once. "Yes, the file shows patterns, missing reports, false arrests, complaints erased. All of them lead back here. To this city, to this department." The crowd erupted in shock. "What? There are more of them?" It wasn't just him. The captain stiffened, his hands curling into fists. "No, that can't be true." "I would have known you didn't," the woman cut in sharply. And that's exactly how they thrived. In the shadows. Using fear, silence, and the badge as their shield, the corrupt officer's breathing grew ragged. His eyes darted wildly, his lips whispering, "Don't say it. Don't say their names." The captain turned sharply toward him. Names? Whose names? But the officer clamped his mouth shut, shaking his head violently. As if speaking would destroy him, the woman stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Her voice was calm, controlled, but sharp as a knife. "You're afraid. Not of me. Not of the crowd. But of them?" The officer shivered, his hands clutching his uniform as though it could still protect him. The captain's face grew pale. "Agent, who else is in that file?" The woman's eyes flickered with something unreadable. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at the crowd, at every face lit up by the glow of their phones. Waiting, desperate for the truth, finally, she spoke. Higher ranks, trusted names. Men you salute without question. They are the real danger, and they think no one can touch them. The crowd gasped loudly. Shouts of outrage spread like fire. The captain's jaw clenched, his heart pounding. That's impossible. If that's true, then my entire department is compromised, the woman finished. Her words hung heavy in the night air, pulling the crowd into stunned silence. The corrupt officer sobbed now, his body shaking. Please, don't make me say it. They'll kill me. The captain turned to him sharply. Who are you protecting? But the officer's lips stayed sealed, his fear greater than his shame. The crowd screamed louder now, demanding answers. Expose them. Tell us the names. Don't let them hide. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, her voice calm but powerful. The file holds the names, and once it's revealed, this city will never be the same. The parking lot fell into uneasy silence again. The truth was bigger than anyone had imagined. The officer was not just corrupt. He was a piece of something much darker, and the woman had just declared war against it. The night air was heavy. The parking lot, once just a quiet corner of the city, had become the center of a storm. The crowd pressed closer, their phones glowing like 100 watchful eyes. The corrupt officer crouched in silence, shaking, trapped between shame and terror. The captain stood stiff, his uniform suddenly feeling heavier than ever before. His badge, once a symbol of pride, now felt like a question. What does this really mean? And in the center of it all stood the woman, calm, strong, unshaken. The federal agent who had turned this entire night into a battlefield of truth. The captain's voice cracked the silence. If what you're saying is true, then this isn't just about him. It's about all of us. The woman's eyes didn't waver. The badge is not a shield for corruption. It's a promise. And too many have forgotten that promise. The crowd cheered, their anger mixing with hope. The corrupt officer looked up suddenly, his face pale, his voice weak. They'll come for you. All of you. Once the names are spoken, the woman crouched slightly, meeting his frightened eyes. They already know I'm here, and they already know the file exists. The difference is, she held up the small black drive in her hand. Tonight, the world will know too. Gasps exploded from the crowd. The officer's body slumped, as if all fight had left him. The captain's throat tightened. His heart pounded as he looked at the drive. If you reveal it, it could tear the city apart. The woman's reply was sharp, almost cutting. Better a city torn apart by truth than held together by lies. The crowd roared with approval, some crying, some shouting, some chanting for justice. The captain closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, the weight of years seemed to fall away. His shoulders straightened. His voice steadied. Then do it, he said firmly. Reveal the names. Let justice begin. The corrupt officer wailed, collapsing completely, his sobs echoing in the night. No, you don't understand these people. They control everything. But no one listened to him anymore. The woman stepped forward, lifting the drive high for all to see. The glow from dozens of phones lit it up, making it shine like a symbol. Her voice rose above the chaos. The truth will not stay buried. Not tonight. Not ever again. The crowd erupted, cheering, chanting, shouting the word justice. Over and over, their voices filling the night sky. The captain raised his hand, this time not to silence them, but to join them. His voice joined theirs, strong, unbroken. The woman's eyes softened for just a moment. She looked at the crowd, at the captain, and finally down at the broken officer. Your time is over. The world will see who you really are, and with that, she pressed a button on the drive. A signal blinked red, then green. The file was sent out into the world, impossible to stop. Names, ranks, dates, proof, everything. The parking lot fell into stunned silence for a moment. the weight of history pressing down on them. Then the first phone buzzed, showing the leaked file. Another phone lit up, then another. Within minutes, the city would know, and after that the nation. The corrupt officer screamed in despair, his cries lost beneath the roar of the people. The woman slipped the drive back into her pocket. Her work here was done. The captain looked at her, his voice low, but filled with respect. "You've just changed everything." She met his gaze. "No, Captain. They changed everything." She pointed to the crowd, to the victims, to the people who refused to stay silent. "I only gave them the truth." The crowd's voices rose higher, a wave of unity and power. For the first time in a long time, hope filled the night, and as the woman turned to leave, her shadow stretching long across the ground, the corrupt officer's broken sobs followed behind. Justice had begun, and nothing could stop it now.